Let's begin. Thank you all for coming. Welcome. Hope you enjoy your backstage view of Rockbridge Conservation and Organization's office and those of others. Um, this is organized by Maury River Lions Steering Committee, and thanks to Rockbridge Conservation uh, and our steering committee member, Jamie Goodin, Executive Director, and my colleague over here, Stan Ponce, joining me. Okay. Um, Quick note on the steering committee. I just want to let you know that the names of folks who have been hardworking. Most of the folks in this list have been on the job with steering committee since we started this in September of 2023. So those are the folks. Thanks to all of those folks. And I'm not going to dwell there. I just want to give a little credit. Where I want to go here is to the agenda. And just give you an idea of where we're going. I've introduced the steering committee, let you know who the names are behind the activities of this group. Meeting guidelines, that'll be on the next slide. We want to point out what we consider to be the key features of the draft lake management plan and outline for you the steering committee's response. We met a couple of weeks ago and decided that the way we wanted to provide feedback to the Scout Council was in the form of a unified response so that they wouldn't have to guess who was thinking what. We would simply put all of our thoughts together and give them a unified response. So we'll put some of that in the feedback survey. I know we won't be able to get it all in, so we'll be serving up a separate document to the council as well. And we're also going to handle your questions and comments. All right, meeting guidelines. Let's just stick to the draft plan. There's a whole lot. This is a story with a whole lot of backstory, a whole lot of history. You can read about it at the Rockbridge Conservation website. There's all kinds of angles and dimensions and anecdotes that go with it, and we really don't want to cover any of that tonight. We really want to spend the time talking about the draft lake management plan that the Scout Council has asked us to read and to get your thoughts on it as well as share ours. Um, Goshen Dam is controversial, but for tonight, let's try to treat it as a tool for managing the lake level. It has crucial functions for the lake and for the ecosystems at the head of the Maury and for lots of people and lots of property and acreage and animals and other things downstream. But we don't want to talk about the dam per se or dam safety. If you've had a look at the plan so far, you are probably aware that dam safety items are in there. The dam is talked about, as is what I'm showing in item 3, the EAP, the Emergency Action Plan. It's very important document. It's out of date right now. It's due for update in 2026, but like the dam, it's not a part of what we want to talk about tonight, because if we go off in those directions, we'll never accomplish the mission for this town hall. We'll ask that you keep your mic muted, except when you're speaking. We'd like to field questions as you raise them. So, and I think Jamie put a note out. So there are two ways to do that.
I sent screenshots.
Oh, you did? Oh, beautiful. Okay. So you have a screenshot showing the raised hand feature. We can see it on the screen here associated with your photo and name. And then there's also the chat. And the chat might well be the most efficient way to handle it. Jamie is going to monitor the chat line and let us know when there's something that we need to deal with, that we need to speak to. And finally, make questions and comments along the way if the comment pertains to the question you're asking. But if you've got a miscellaneous comment, or you just want to state an opinion like, I really think such and such, I'd ask that you hold that to the end, because when we get to the end of material that we really want to cover with you, we're going to open it up again. So just anything miscellaneous like that, hold it to the end, please. Uh, this is from Google Maps today. We're seeing a good bit of Lake Meriwether, not all of it. And I don't know when the picture was taken. I looked quickly for a date. I can't tell you when it was shot, but I can tell by the my perception of where the lake level is that it's probably toward the end of the latest drawdown that was done while they were doing um, wintertime and early spring maintenance. Um, there's a good bit more of the lake, but you see it narrows as you go upstream, and then above the lake is miles of other properties, all of which are involved in this particular watershed effort to reduce sediment that comes into the Little Calf Pasture River and the Maury River. But I just wanted to orient everybody geographically. This is the dam and spillway area. You think they can see me doing that? Probably so. And you see Lake 39, I mean, Route 39 coming down here. This is the Calf Pasture River. And in a moment, we'll see where they come together. Just above this Golden Goshen Pass trailhead marker is what's become known as the confluence. It's where this 0.83 segment of Little Calf Pasture River comes down and meets with the Calf Pasture River. The waters flow together, they form the Maury, and of course that goes all the way down to Glasgow and on into the James River. Quick shot to remind everybody what things looked like in early August of 2023. This is a real life shot of the Little Calf Pasture right here, feeding in at the confluence. This is the Calf Pasture River. This is what I used to call the Tale of Two Rivers. So, and that's kind of how it looks when the water is laden with sediment, as you see it in this picture. Dr. Robert Brent shot this, and he used it on the cover of his 2023 report. And then about a month later, the lake was I don't know if it was completely down, but portions of it were, and this is kind of what it looks like. So you have a lot of exposed soils here. But one thing I want to point out is that, and I didn't realize it until I studied this picture recently. The Scout Council, when they say, one of the things that they have to do is to get debris out of the lake, and that's understating the task, because it's actually getting debris out of two bodies of water. It's the lake itself, and it's the Little Calf Pasture River, which is what we see flowing through here. All right, enough pictorial history. That's the past. And we're at a watershed period now, if you'll permit the analogy. There are new people who are responsible for the day-to-day management and operation of the National Capital Area Council. We've had opportunities to meet with them, to communicate with them, to collaborate with them, along with other stakeholders of the watershed. And so things are opening up. This is what I've called an unprecedented opportunity that we have right now. This draft plan gives us an opportunity to better understand their vision for how they want to better manage the lake and improve certain practices to create a more environmentally sound situation. The draft plan itself, we're pleased that it's a flexible living document. It's dynamic. It's not It's not cast in concrete, even as a draft. So this draft will be modified to some degree, and all of that is going to be based on our input, our feedback, your input, and the judgment and thinking of the Scout Council folks who are responsible for their plan. It is their plan, um, and they'll be carrying it forward through time. This, as you know, is a non-point source situation as far as the sediment that flows into the rivers. And DEQ, while it's our state regulator for water quality, they have limited ability to dictate anything to anybody. All they can do is study, analyze, conclude, and suggest, and provide technical assistance and help landowners find financial assistance. So another key feature, and this is really crucial, a normal annual drawdown of 90 days or less. To give you a point of contrast, the wintertime drawdown has been known to run as long as 7 months. It's crucial because the longer there's a drawdown, the longer the level of water in the lake is down, the longer the soils, the mudflats and the shoreline are exposed, wind and other weather elements work on those soils, and more erosion is actually produced. And then when the water is raised up, that sediment goes into suspension, and when the next time things start flowing through the dam out into the little calf pasture, we have the sediment pollution. The plan acknowledges the importance of the idea of full pool. It just means, and I think it's 1,396 feet, which is an elevation benchmark. But that's what Dr. Robert Brent has suggested. Many of you have seen that stated before, but it's good to see it acknowledged in the plan. Another key feature is the formation of a lake management advisory group, which is just that, an advisory group, no decision-making authority. It will include representatives of the community and some agencies, perhaps. It will be chaired by someone from the council. And whatever comes out of that, whatever work product comes out of the advisory group will be taken under advisement by the council, and they will do with it as much as they can. Another feature is the plan calls for discrete work plans for specific activities. So if there's going to be a wintertime drawdown, what will that consist of? What are the objectives for that? What are the component activities that have to be accounted for and budgeted for? Tools, materials, timing, schedules, all of that should be a part of these work plans. The plan also provides for routine monitoring and recording. And finally, there's a framework there for potential future improvements. Some of that comes through what the lake manager does. Some of it comes through what the Lake Management Advisory Group comes up with, as well as input from other stakeholders in the watershed and the community at large. The Lake Management Advisory Group, one of its functions is to serve as a bridge between the council, the NCAC, and the community. I think we are there. I'm going to hand off to Stan Ponce, who's going to go through our committee response.
Thank you, George. At the outset, I'd like to say that I was one of two architects of the plan, and my thoughts in developing a draft was that this draft would be like a Christmas tree. And in many ways, the draft that you're seeing still has that element to it. The thinking is that collaboration would take part between stakeholders and discussions, and we would put more meat on some of the areas here. And in my opinion, there's several areas in here that require more detail, and I'm going to touch on some of that at this point. With respect to general comments, George has touched on several of these already. I personally feel that this is a step forward, having only been involved with this issue for about 2 years. And but it was apparent to me initially that effective communication among the parties really was literally non-existent. And so there were concerns that just hadn't really been talked out. But I believe we have an opportunity here. I've worked with several of the senior managers and senior leadership of the Scouts. I believe they are sensitive to our concerns regarding downstream water quality. And I think we are gaining a better appreciation of their needs regarding the lake management. And I was just looking here at a picture George showed of the drawdown. It was pretty evident that there was debris in there that needs to be removed. And the shallow nature of much of the lake really precludes being able to remove that debris utilizing a boat. So they have to go in there physically and get it. Another general comment here is that the Maury River clearly is a very important resource to the citizens of Rockbridge County. And it's a Virginia scenic river, which is an important designation in terms of the state recognizing its quality. And from my perspective, having spent a lot of time out west with the Western rivers in several of our national parks, the rivers I see here really remind me of national park quality in many ways. It provides important recreational use with respect to swimming, kayaking, fishing, just a lot of personal use here by the residents and visitors to our area, as well as the Scouts, I would imagine as well. Okay, next slide. So specifically, some of specifically the areas we're going to be looking at here, touching on in more details, the Lake Management Advisory Group, the discrete work plans, the monitoring that needs to be done, development of partnerships, and then the concept of a charter. So I'll touch on each of these here in more detail. So with respect to the advisory group, George mentioned it is a decision-making body that the Scouts, the group itself is not a decision-making body. The Scouts make the decision on their reservoir as lake, as they refer to it in this case. And that's important. I look at the advisory group, and this is one of the things that I put into the draft plan. I look at it as it's like a think tank. It's a sounding board. It's a communication bridge that can provide advice to folks. What are the different types of the role and function that you see of the membership? I think they can provide expertise and knowledge that may not be readily available either through the direct membership or say have some ad hoc members as necessary depending on the issue. The group can represent stakeholder interest. They can bring to the table what property owners may be thinking in terms of desires, recreational users, environmental groups, and the like. They can help facilitate communication in outreach, which really helps with the communication within the community. They can frame recommendations for consideration. They can raise awareness with the general public. They can help build consensus with stakeholders that could be brought to the decision makers at the Scouts, and they can review and provide feedback. One of the things that is built into the plan is an annual review. How are things working? What do we need to change? What are we doing well? What do we need to do better? The membership here basically is going to involve the Scouts, the MRA, county government, the Department of Environmental Quality. Those are things that I would recommend should be in there. That's not been detailed really at this point. How frequently does the group need to meet? They're talking 3 times a year. I think that's minimum. It could be more than that, depending on if there's a necessity to do that. Moving on to the next area here, work plans. I feel that this is a very important communication tool here. Now, I'm not talking about a detailed work plan that would involve budget and things that we're not necessarily directly involved in. What I would like to see in this basically is enough specificity that we can understand what it needs to be done, where it needs to be done, the duration up front of what's involved, those sorts of things. But we're very supportive of the concept of work plans, and these are action-oriented documents that outline how specific activities within the broad lake management plan will be carried out. Next slide. A couple of things that we've talked about is, to the degree possible, I would suggest that the first meeting following the scouting activity year, which would be early fall, we could discuss really a series of the activities that are planned over the next year, just so we have an idea of what is being considered. And also, to the degree possible, how can these be bundled if need be? Obviously, there's going to be the winter drawdown for purposes, but there's other things that are going to need to be done that come up from time to time that they'll be developing plans about. All right. A critical concern with respect to the work plans is the annual winter drawdown. And as mentioned here just a little while ago, there is a need to do the drawdown with respect, in particular, debris removal, but they may also need to be doing some inspections. The current plan talks about a 90-day window in the period of December, January, and February, and that would be something they're looking at as probably the maximum amount of time that would need to be done, and they're suggesting that it may be a shorter period of time. They're talking about 9.5 feet drawdown the first 2 months, and looking at some of the past work done by Robert Brent from James Madison University, which in my opinion, as a fellow scientist, he's done excellent work. Drawing it down 9 feet exposes about 290 acres of mudflats. Okay, so that gives you some idea of the amount that we're talking about. We're talking about 9.5 feet the first 2 months, and then it would be less than that the last month. And I'm not quite sure what the rationale behind the last month is, and we need to get more detail on that. Monitoring is a key area that is important, and in my view, this area really needs to be looked at in more detail. In a preliminary discussion that we had with some of the stakeholders and looking at the Christmas tree early on in late January, we talked about the monitoring. We suggested that DEQ provide some expertise in helping design the monitoring plans. Much of the monitoring that's in the existing document is very qualitative as opposed to what I would say is quantitative. I do believe that it's important that total suspended solids be measured as opposed to turbidity, although a relationship has been developed between turbidity and total suspended solids by Dr. Brent, but I think that should be something that is done in the future, in my opinion. And I also think it would be appropriate for DEQ to be sampling at the outflow of the reservoirs with respect to looking at the um, the TMDL and whether or not the best management practices that are being employed really are making a difference. So those are just some initial thoughts. I answer more detailed questions about that.
Did I jump too much?
No, in terms of the monitoring, um, let me see here. We're talking here primarily of discharge, the flow, and in terms of water quality, things that need to be thought about are the physical constituents, the total suspended solids, and water temperature, because temperature is of value, particularly to downstream organisms. And depending on where water is coming from in the outlet of the reservoir, it will be at a different temperature. Chemical constituents that can be considered dissolved oxygen, again, very critical to downstream macroinvertebrates in the fisheries. Um, Nutrients would be of interest in pH, but in particular in the upstream end, what sort of nutrients, particularly nitrogen and phosphorus, are coming into the reservoir, because the reservoir basically is an incubation element for algae, and those are triggering mechanisms. And so that would be nice to know. The biological side of it, again, of interest, but not necessarily directly related to the TMDL, the biological side being algae. And E. coli just is an indicator of pathogens from animal waste and the like, okay? So, but I have touched on the frequency. I think we really need to do a little more work on, get some people involved that really understand that, so that the sampling is directed towards the looking at how we're doing with respect to the TMDL, and that's quantitative enough so that we have good data. And then who's going to be responsible for doing that and what's involved, that there's going to be some horse trading on that, I'm sure, as well. Moving on to partnerships, there's a lot of opportunities here. I would really hope that down the road, partnerships can be strengthened and developed between the Scouts, the Moy River Alliance, the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, and local colleges. I mean, we have a shared resource and we really want the same thing for it. So there's opportunities there. One of the things that was discussed, next slide, George. Sorry. One of the things that we discussed in our January 28th meeting, concerns were raised that in the 2018 implementation plan that had been developed primarily directed by the Department of Environmental Quality, had set forth guidelines for each stakeholder in terms of their best management practices. And there was a feeling that not everyone participated, and in particular, the reservoir was part of that non-participation. So we asked a question at that meeting, what kind of assurance can you give us that you're going to adhere to this, something like Scouts Honor, so to speak? And the response was, I thought, very positive. They said, well, let's look at developing a charter. And this is a charter for the plan, as I understand it. They mentioned in the report a charter for the advisory group, but at that discussion, we talked about a charter for the whole plan. And a charter really, I think, can do a lot to help build trust among the stakeholders, and which is a key element of developing future partnerships. And I think communication is the first step, but through that communication, we can build trust. And this will help assure that what's here and the work that's been done to do it is going to be carried out. So those are just some of the things that I'm helping these folks with. And again, I'm new to this and have enjoyed working with with folks, and having seen issues like this before in my professional life, I think there is an opportunity here because people are talking to each other. It seems to me there's many new players on the scout side, and the conversations I've had with them, I would characterize as positive in wanting to work with us.
And Stan, we have a couple of questions from the chat. Could you please clarify which of the monitoring parameters and frequencies are you proposed in the plan and which you're recommending?
Definitely total suspended solids, I think is very important because the TMDL, if you look at it, it's in units of mass per unit time. It's not turbidity, all right? And Dr. Brent did some work where he developed a relationship of total suspended solids, and so you could take a turbidity measure and then run it through an equation, a regression equation that was developed, and get an estimate of the total suspended solids. But I think moving forward, I think that's important. All right. I think it's important with respect to the outflow that we're looking at temperature and dissolved oxygen because of the impact that has on downstream biota. Right. People have raised concerns about, where's the sediment coming from? To help get a handle on that, we should be looking at total suspended solids coming in at the inflow to be able to document that. Again, nutrients could be important, particularly phosphorus, which is a real trigger for these algal blooms, would be another one to be considered. Okay. But then you have to look at who's going to be doing this, what's involved in terms of time and equipment and that sort of thing. But I think those are discussions that we should have, and that's why I'm recommending that maybe DEQ get involved and provide advice.
Yeah, answer the question.
I believe so.
That it?
So far.
Okay. Thought you said two.
Before we open up fully for questions, I want to just remind everybody how to access the plan and the feedback survey. If you got the reminder email late this afternoon, that information is in there. For anyone who may be on this call that is in this town hall that did not get that email, you can subscribe to our mailing list at MauryRiverAlliance.org. And as soon as I see your request come in, I'll be happy to get that information back out to you. Or you can email to mra@rockbridgeconservation.org. Again, that comes right to me. I'll turn it around so you know exactly what you need to do. The way it's set up is that if you haven't done it yet, the Scout Council provided us with a link to a gateway page on their website. When you get to that gateway page, there's a small amount of guidance information, and at the top, toward the top, there's a button that you tap to go look at the draft plan. And toward the bottom of that screen, you'll see another button that you would tap to go to the feedback survey. And they really want people to do the survey. They want to know what we think. And the survey is in there are two types of response mechanisms built into their survey. One is a set of qualitative items. They ask a question. What do you think about this? And it's kind of like a 5-star rating. Okay. So they're sampling reader sentiment there. The other type is free text form boxes. So you can, then I think there are 2 questions that take that form. So you just type in. If anyone's got a long response that they want to put in there, I can tell you because I asked. There's a 4,000 character limit on those free text boxes. I know because I've got a pretty good idea who's in the town hall right now, and I've communicated with some of you, I heard from some of you, and I know that you've run into that limitation on length. But it's 4,000 characters, so if you've got any kind of software application that counts characters for you, you can put your text in there and get a character count. And If you're close enough, you can maybe edit yourself down a bit and get the whole thing in.
You have 3 questions. First one, are any engineering solutions like trash racks, booms, etc., proposed in the plan to reduce the need to lower the lake for trash removal?
No,
No,
no, that the idea of trash racks has been raised, but it's not really included in the plan, and the plan is framed in a way, at the outset, those sorts of things could be considered, but they would be considered in separate discussions with their own analysis, looking at regulatory effects and that sort of thing. Having seen the inflow area to the reservoir, I think it would be somewhat difficult to put a trash rack in there. It's pretty spread out and almost wetland-like up at the upper area.
let me add to that too. It's pretty clear to me that I mean, the plan is a framework. It's intended to be an evolving framework. And what the plan seeks to address at this stage, it's at a level of detail that is below what the plan is trying to address at this point. So the plan sets out certain roles and responsibilities with some specificity, with a lot of specificity in some cases. But in terms of particular solutions, things to think about, things to try, it doesn't really get to that level of detail.
I'll add to your ad.
Go ahead.
My hope would be that sort of question could be addressed in the advisory group.
Yeah.
And that, we could maybe draw in some, outside experts that could give us really good information as to what the feasibility of something like that would be, rather than Stan Ponce going out there and taking a look at it. But I think the advisory group provides a mechanism to explore some of those questions.
Another question, does the proposed charter have any legal enforceability, to our knowledge?
That is to be determined, because there really isn't anything in there in terms of what the charter would look like and how it would be tied back, say, to state regulatory elements. And the non-point source pollution, basically through the Clean Water Act, is handled through the total daily loads element. But from what I understand from the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, that's not something they enforce. So I think we need to explore that, and that's part of the reason why the idea of a charter has been suggested. Okay. But I think when the parties discuss that, I think it's going to be more of let's work together and see what we can do, rather than making it legal. Okay.
Right. How can folks download a PDF of the draft plan to review a paper copy?
That, to my understanding, is not possible.
Not possible the way the draft plan is set up right now. It's on that issue platform. So it's, you can make it, you can go full screen with it, you can go back down with it, you can page back and forth with it, but that's kind of the extent of your ability to touch the draft plan.
I sure share your desire to do that, because that's how I like to review things. I like to have it in front of me.
Yeah.
Be able to touch and feel it, draw lines on it and what have you. But as it stands right now, to my knowledge, that is not possible to do.
Will the periodic reports regarding effluent water quality be published in some fashion where the public can see what the test results are? And so we can be assured that they are being done as being laid out in the plan.
That's some of the specificity that we're talking about. They talk in there that it'll be recorded and would be digitally available, but I think that needs some additional thought put to it, to what it really means. But that again is my opinion, okay?
We have a question, on the length of survivability of, aquatic life during drawdowns of the length that are being proposed. I don't think we have an answer for that. It's certainly not in the plan. It's not in part of my background.
I don't know what they're really asking there. Is survivability downstream?
No, I don't think so. Joan, you want to qualify that for us or clarify it? Take yourself off mute if you want to do that. Okay, let's go on.
Okay, here I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, I sure can.
Okay, I had to be approved. Anyway, I'm just wondering about aquatic life. How long can it sustain suspended sediment? For how many days, how many months before it's affected by the sediment when it's released during drawdown?
Well, sediment definitely is not something that downstream organisms are excited about. Particularly if it gets entrained in the interstitious components of the downstream gravels, it smothers things. So those are detrimental things that suspended sediment can do. It depends on the particle size involved, but just in general, it's not something that healthy systems are looking for.
John Pancake may have a comment to add.
I've been doing monitoring on the water downstream in the little calf pasture for 3.5, 4 years, and the ecosystem in the little calf downstream is in bad shape. But I know that it can take years for a stream to recover, but I also have noticed that when I sample in the fall, I sample in the spring and the fall, and the fall is always better than the spring. And that's because during the summer, the lake is at full pool and there's not as much sediment coming down. So I suspect that if we reduce the drawdown, there will be a lot less sediment and the stream may be able to heal itself. That is what Dr. Brent has, he's the scientist at James Madison University who studied this, and he believes that the kind of regimen that the scouts are talking about would let the stream recover. But we'd have to do testing to find out.
Thanks, John. Charles Ware, I wanted to get back. You asked a question about what the if we have any idea of the elevation of the lake in one of the pictures that I showed, and the answer to that is no. I looked, and I'm not. Yeah, go ahead.
Respond, with a question, another question.
Go ahead.
So in reading the draft report, I had some difficulty understanding the various safety and other issues involved because there weren't very clear explanations about the changes in the reservoir levels. I just heard earlier in this presentation today that a 9-foot drawdown is something that's proposed, which since the dam is 44 feet high, it's not clear to me how that affects the total storage capacity of the reservoir. It'd be something that would certainly affect dam safety, or really how the level that was shown in the picture, the one that I asked about, I think that's pretty critical because it showed a stream channel and essentially no water as storage or capacity in that part of the reservoir. So the lake level would be, 0 or whatever the depth of the stream was. But it's hard to understand how you're affecting the flow of sedimentation unless you can understand how much water is on top of the layers of sediment that have been deposited in the lake. So I think that's critical information seems to be missing. Also, I might note that the question about the impact of algal growth in the lower river is critically tied to the depth of the reservoir because algal growth is, of course, stimulated by light penetration of the reservoir, and light typically might penetrate 4 or 5 feet, depending on the clarity of the water and so forth. But, if the reservoir is 30 feet deep, then you're not really changing the algal growth down river by raising or lowering the level by 9 feet or something. But again, I can't make that type of guess or judgment about what would happen unless I have that information. I just would suggest that's something that does really needs to be looked into. And I hope this is maybe the time that I can interject this, but I think there is a real dam safety issue because of the nature of the upstream basin. There's a fairly large basin, and you have this 40-foot dam, which would fail if overtopped. And I haven't seen figures on what it would take to how much storage capacity there is in the lake, and or how long it would take to actually draw down the lake if it were full to create storage capacity, as is discussed in this draft plan. It said that before a storm, the lake would be drawn down, but typically if you have a 3-day notice before a hurricane storm like Helene strikes an area, I wonder whether there's any real capacity to draw the lake down any significant amount. We did witness in North Carolina and Tennessee a number of dam failures, which resulted from that large rain event. But the potential is certainly present in the Maury Basin, as witnessed by the fact that we have the Camille storm in Nelson and other places that cause catastrophic flooding and landslides and all that. So I do think that safety is more than tangentially related to these questions about water quality and so forth. I think it's something that the committee needs to weigh eventually, and in making recommendations about what the reservoir level should be.
Good point.
John Pancake, did you have a response to that?
Yeah, I was there when that picture was taken, and I believe that was a typical winter drawdown, which was about 9.5 feet. And there, some years ago, the scouts built an emergency spillway on the southeast side of the dam, so that if it's designed so that if there is a catastrophic flood, that the water would flow around the dam, as you face downstream, around the left side of the dam and down into the little calf pasture instead of overtopping the dam. Whether that would work, an expert, and I'm not an expert, would have to say, but that's the idea.
Thanks, John. We have a question from Scott.
Following up on Charles's comments, but more looking at Dr. Brent's graphs, it appears to me that the full pond designation was at about 27 to 28 feet during the winter, and the drawdowns were down between 18 and 19 feet. I saw in the proposal that they would not be dropped more than 9 feet. So, I mean, that's exactly where it is right now. And the proposal said 9.5. So I think there's a little bit of discrepancy there. It's clearly not anywhere near the 40 feet of the top of the dam, but If full pond is typically 28 feet, seems like we've already got a little bit of leeway there. But again, it's a dirt dam, so I understand the concern about the pressure on the dam and especially the downstream residents that doesn't seem to be considered in this draft. But I understand that that would have been part of the emergency plan that apparently was rejected anyway. So
The the Scouts dam engineer, um, as far as we understand it, it had set that 9.5 drawdown. Um, and that's what you'll see in the operation and maintenance certificate for Goshen Dam. And it's been there a while. I don't know how long that number goes back, but it goes back some years. Hasn't changed. And when we've talked with the Region 5 dam safety engineer about that level, he said, it's fine with me. He said, it's not really my call. He said, if I thought that there was, that because it's a piece of data that's called for the O&M certificate. So he said, if I thought that any number that was put in there was going to, put the dam in jeopardy and jeopardize the safety of the area, I would say something. But he said, it is what it is. I have no basis on which to say it's too little or not enough. I know that there's a margin of safety in there, and that's what I'm concerned with. It's my responsibility, and and he's with Department of Conservation and Recreation.
We have another question.
Oh, let me just add here, but I think the question's really about using the reservoir to help deal with storm flows. Good, very good. But I also want to say, that there has been significant drawdowns in the past, like 19 feet or so that you mentioned. And the fact that the scouts are saying 9.5 feet, okay, is a real step forward. And they're also looking at a shorter time period. So I think that that's one of the signals that I think we as a group need to be aware of, that they're trying to work with us.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Another question. Do we have a sense for the upstream, meaning upstream from the lake challenges? And does the proposed group and or scouts have a plan to enlist help upstream to reduce trash and sediment coming into the lake?
They have had help early on. One of the things that was proposed in the implementation plan was to get VMI cadets involved in clearing out an area of debris that was a roadside trash dump. And so there was a big effort, and there were others involved in that as well. But the main labor force was a bunch of VMI cadets, and that got taken care of rather promptly.
And the county got rid of a dumping area.
Yeah.
And seriously, and the county, as I understand from visiting with the county administrator, they ensured the closure of an area that had been used as a dump site upstream, where refrigerators and other things were coming on down.
Yeah. So some of that has been done, and the parcels that are upstream from the Scouts property divide between agriculture and forestal. And so you have timbering going on up there, you have ag operations of one kind and another. And the best management practices in the implementation plan are geared to those two different types of land use. And there has been some adoption by those landowners of the best management practices that apply to their situation, their type of land use, and their particular, the characteristics of their property. But that's a minority, and kind of a small minority. So there's more education and persuasion that needs to go on amongst those property owners higher up in the watershed. Scouts aren't the only problem, although I think Dr. Brent showed that it's not like there's a ton of sediment coming down, a ton of loose soils coming down into the lake, and therefore that's why the lake has a lot of loose soil in it. He says that's not the case. And his latest round of studies kind of demonstrated that. But there's responsibility to be claimed by those upstream.
Another question. Have there been any estimates made regarding how much the lake's holding capacity has been diminished by siltation? Have there been estimates made regarding how many years will pass before the lake is silted up to the point that the safety of the dam is in question and whether it will be able to provide stormwater retention?
Can you answer that?
That's an I don't know for me.
Yeah, I'm not as sure. I'm not sure. I mean, it's very reasonable and it's
Yeah.
definitely something that happens with all dams, but in this one in particular. But I'm working the water quality side of it, so.
Yeah, we had a similar or a related question. As the lake will continue to collect sediment, as all dams do over time, is there a plan for periodically removing that sediment?
They have they have done some dredging in the past. They experimented with it. And you know, when you get involved in that, first of all, you got to be able to get the equipment in, get the material out, dump the material somewhere, and you look at the extent of the mud flats. In the case that I just mentioned here from the implementation plan, they were talking that if you did have a 9-foot drawdown, you're looking at about 290 acres of exposed mud flats. That's a lot of area.
And someone is asking about compliance. Who authorizes creation of the private sewage setup, leach fields, etc.? Shouldn't there be a 5-year reapproval to minimize leakages?
I don't know. It's a very reasonable question. I'm not sure who does that regulatory side of it. I imagine the county must have something to do with that.
Any other questions? See, and I just asked you to unmute. There you go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I would be happy to provide anybody with a PDF of this plan that I made up, and I think Jamie maybe made up one too. So let me know.
Good, good.
Thanks, Ann.
All
We
right.
have a question from David Hopkins. Stan,
If anyone wants to make that request, send it to mra@rockbridgeconservation.org and I'll coordinate on it with Ann. Okay, Ann?
Stan, will the routine monitoring mentioned in the draft plan be accomplished only by VSA? Assessment by an independent group should or could be added.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think that element of the plan really needs to be looked at in more detail. And, you know, who's responsible, be part of those discussions. And again, much of what's in the plan is qualitative, you know, as opposed to quantitative. And so those are issues really, I think that really need, more effort. And as I said, the original design really was somewhat like a Christmas tree. There's some ornaments that need to be hung on that element.
And John Pancake has a comment on this
Yeah.
question.
A group of us, including David Hopkins and Phyllis Fevrier, have done monitoring below the dam for the last few years, and that was provided as part of the original plan with DEQ. But I do think that DEQ could do a better job and would have more credibility, and so we're hoping that we could get them interested in doing that. In addition, Dr. Brent has put some monitoring equipment in the lake that has recorded some data about the sediment and so forth, but he has said that it needs to be sort of reconditioned, I guess you would say. And there's no plan to do that, but we're hoping that we can get somebody to help get that equipment back into top shape.
Thanks, John. We have another comment. Though local residents and recreational users of the Maury River are mentioned or alluded to, there's not a category listing them under Section 18 stakeholders. or other potentially interested parties, could an item U be added?
Sure.
Make a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think all the stakeholders ought to be considered, and if there's a gap there, this is the opportunity to make people aware of it. I don't think they were intentionally excluded, do you? No.
I doubt it. There's multiple references to downstream users and downstream recreational users and so forth. So I don't think that that was being overlooked, but nevertheless, it wasn't formally addressed in the plan either. So whoever raised that question, by all means, make sure it's a part of your feedback.
Any other questions or comments tonight?
Time.
Okay, we are wonderfully early in wrapping this up. Thank you very much, each and every one of you. Let me just ask the question now, is there anything I can do to assist you at this point in terms of helping you and just, from the administrative side of getting to the plan or understanding something about how to interact with the feedback survey or anything else, anything you would like MRA to tell you at this point, MRA steering committee? I'd be happy to do what I can, and I'll work with Ann to make the PDF available. Because if you're getting our emails, those are coming from my desk. So I'm in touch with our entire mailing list. And I just want to say again, I just want to reinforce something Stan said earlier is this isn't, well, I said unprecedented opportunity, but this is, it's been a bumpy road. It hasn't been easy for anybody who, since September of 2023, has been involved in trying to, pursue solutions having to do with the lake and the rivers. It has been a long, bumpy ride. If you came to our April 2023 forum, you got a good taste of that. And given where we are now, compared to where we were a little more than a year ago, I think we're in just a tremendously exciting place right now. I don't shout, I don't dance around my office at home saying yippee, but I feel that we've really made progress. And there's been progress in learning how to work with the scouts and in learning how to work with DEQ, all the way from the headquarters level and central office to staffers in the Valley Region office in Harrisonburg. There's been a tremendous learning journey that we've been allowed to go through here. And on the basis of that and understanding the various kinds of resistance that we encountered along the way, for us to be able to have a town hall like this and discuss the kinds of issues and address the kinds of questions that have arisen this evening, I just think it's just tremendous. So we will keep doing what we do. And if you have suggestions for us to do anything differently or better, send them my way too.
I would really encourage you to take advantage of your opportunity to comment. There's wisdom in crowds, in my opinion. And so the more comments that come in, the better product I think we'll all end up with in the end.
Constructive feedback has been one of my operative phrases. So when you hit that feedback survey, if you're going into the free text form box, just keep it constructive, keep it objective if and polite, diplomatic. We're not looking to arouse ire. We are looking to deepen and improve the relationship. So if you need to rant, call me. I've got a special setting on my phone. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.